Welcome back to the KingCast. We've been off for a few weeks. Great to have you with us again today. We weren't actually going to record this weekend, give the students a chance to settle into the new quarter, but given the events of the week in Washington, D.C., we thought it was important to come online and talk about this a little bit amongst ourselves. We're bringing on the young Democrats and the young Republicans, the leaders of both those clubs, to talk to us today, so that should be fun. With me today, as always, Nicole Rohr, Jake Murphy, Jack Zipper, Rahil Jaswal. Sadly, we're missing Lily Ryan today. She had another appointment this morning, but she'll be back with us. We won't be back. We won't be here next week, but we'll be here the following week, so she'll join us, of course, when that time comes. We're excited to be back with you, as always, for another KingCast. Our guests this week, Alicia Paz and Max Crook from the King Young Democrats Club, and Will Burke and Sean Mullen from the King Young Republicans Club. Talk about what went on in the country today on Wednesday, January 6th. On the show today, U.S. Capitol chaos in the Electoral College, the Georgia Senate race outcomes and the Dem control of the Senate. Of course, what do we learn this week? King things in sports. We'll get some predictions on the NFL playoffs from Rahil and Jack. 3 jobs reports show renewed labor market weakness. And as always, economic data in the markets. Nicole, you've been spending some time investigating what happened this week and what it means for our country. Why don't you talk to us about the chaos in the Capitol?
Yeah, so as Mr. Roche mentioned, there was a very sad turn of events for our country this week when thousands of protesters supporting President Trump stormed the U.S. Capitol on Wednesday, following a rally that President Trump held outside the White House, in which he continued to challenge the election results. Members of Congress hid under desks and even took their identification pins off to avoid being attacked. Protesters smashed windows, defaced halls, and assaulted police inside the building. Rioters also ransacked the office of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. The man photographed inside her office was arrested yesterday, as well as many other rioters. Additionally, a number of companies said they fired employees who participated in the riot. While action is being taken against these rioters, the question now is, what happens over the next 10 days until Joe Biden is sworn in as the next U.S. president? While President Trump ultimately denounced the actions of the rioters and pledged a smooth and peaceful transition of power, the damage had already been done. Some continue to see Trump as dangerous, particularly with the access to military and nuclear weapons, and others believe some form of rebuke for what he has done is necessary. Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats are working on another round of articles of impeachment for inciting the violence at the Capitol, which they expect to submit on Monday. It would be the first time in U.S. history that a president was impeached twice. It is believed that the House could act quickly, given the members of the House experienced the events firsthand, and not much additional evidence would be needed. There's also talk of the 25th Amendment being invoked. The 25th Amendment states that if the president becomes unable to do his job, the vice president becomes the president. To invoke the 25th Amendment, the vice president and the majority of the cabinet must declare the president unfit for office. The section of the amendment addressing this procedure has never been invoked and has been further complicated by various resignations of cabinet officials, leaving only acting cabinet officials who arguably may not have that power. Certain people have also called for a censure of the president for abusing his power. A censure is a formal and public reprimand of a government officials whose actions run counter to the acceptable standards of behavior. A resignation by the president is also possible, potentially to avoid the repercussions I mentioned, but this is considered unlikely by most. Further, the White House has been particularly discouraging of any actions against Trump as unnecessarily, particularly with him leaving office in just 10 days. Major social media platforms have permanently suspended Trump's account in light of the concern of his dangerous conduct and inciting violence. This raises many other issues about the power of these social media platforms and the precedents that they have the ability to set. Since he is suspended, the only way for Trump to reach the public now and his 80 million followers is by sending statements or videos to the White House press corps. My best guess is that Trump won't resign and the 25th Amendment won't be invoked by Pence, even though he did not reject Biden's win and send the results back to the states that Trump had wanted. However, I think that the House of Representatives will quickly impeach Trump, although the Senate won't convict by January 20th. We should expect a flurry of pardons in the next few days, including talks of a potential pardon for Trump himself and his family. Unfortunately, we may ultimately find out if a president can pardon himself. Also, keep in mind that pardons only protect against federal charges, and Trump may face legal actions at the state level. Trump is scheduled to leave the White House on January 19th and announced yesterday that he won't be attending Biden's inauguration. Most believe that this is the end of Trump and that his legacy is tarnished, but we will see what happens in the next 10 days and the weeks that follow.
Okay, great report as always, Nicole. Again, I'm glad you caught up to that idea about whether or not impeachment can actually be fulfilled in terms of a trial in the Senate. There doesn't seem to be enough time for a trial to develop in the Senate. Is that right, Nicole?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Now, Nicole, is this a symbolic gesture, you think, by the Democrats in terms of the impeachment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's politics. They want to send a message. They want to set the precedent that this is not how a sitting president can act. And I don't know if they're necessarily expecting through impeachment that he'd be actually removed from office.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that's the case. I think the laying down in history books that here we have a president impeached twice in one term. I think that's important for the Democrats. Lindsey Graham is out this morning and overnight urging President-elect Biden to discourage the idea of going for another impeachment for the sake of the country. We're going to have to find some healing somewhere. Sadly, we're not there yet. Now, that wasn't all of it, of course. We had, in fact, the Georgia Senate race this week, the runoff races for the 2 Senate seats. We're going to bring our reporter, Jake Murphy, and talk to us about the Georgia Senate race and what it means for the U.S. Senate control. Jake, what do you have for us?
That's right. So we're going to talk about the Georgia Senate races for a minute. So this Wednesday, following a series of victories in the Georgia runoff elections, the Democrats took control of the Senate. Now, this assured a Democratic majority in both chambers of Congress. Good news for President-elect Biden. The victories by Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, both Democrats, solidified Georgia's political transformation and ensured that President-elect Joe Biden will have an easier time enacting his agenda. The party in Senate control decides what comes to the floor for a vote. A Democratic majority means that Senator Chuck Schumer, the expected leader, will be able to control what legislation is given priority and what proposals are blocked. It also allows for more coordination with the Democratic-led House and the new Democratic White House. Still, in the Senate, lawmakers need 60 votes to advance most legislation. This often forces legislators to work together across party lines because of the rarity of supermajorities. Some Democrats have called for changing the rules to require only a simple majority, however. As a result, some Democratic proposals such as Medicare for All and the Green New Deal will still face slim prospects, even with the party in control.
So, Jake, great report. And you made it clear that Democrats have the power now, right? But it's not a lot of power in the Senate, is it?
Yeah, that's right. Because if you think about the way our government is organized, even if the Democrats have most control or any party has most control, they're still going to face some challenges in getting everything they want done.
That's right. I mean, there are some conservative Democrats in the Senate, moderate Democrats in the Senate, right, that have voiced opposition to some of the agenda items, for instance, the Green New Deal, Medicare for All. So while they have control of the floor in terms of legislation, the 50-50 split obviously means it's pretty even. Of course, Kamala Harris has that deciding vote. All right, great report, Jake. Great report, Nicole. Let's now expand this discussion and bring in the leaders of the Young Democrats and the Young Republican clubs here at King. All right, this time, I want to bring in our leaders from the Young Democrats and the Young Republicans. The leaders from the Young Democrats are with us today. Alicia Paz. Good morning, Alicia. Welcome to the KingCast. Max Crook. Max, welcome.
Hi, thanks.
For the Young Republicans, Sean Mullen. Sean, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Roach.
And Mr. Will Burke. Will, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Mr. Roach.
Great to see you. Thank you for joining us on this very important week for our country. Of course, we had the Georgia Senate races. And of course, we had the Electoral College vote, which is to be certified on January 6th, Wednesday, interrupted markedly by the protests and violence in the Capitol, something we've been discussing within the King community since Wednesday. Ms. Sedlowski and Mr. Coolm have put together some material for us as a basis for conversation with students and teachers to work through what we experienced. And so we want to talk about a little bit today with the leaders of our clubs. Why don't I just start off with a really simple question for all of you? And why don't you start us off, Elisa? Why don't you share your thoughts of the events on Wednesday? I imagine, like most of us, you were watching on the TV and kind of horrified what was going on. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So obviously, like a sense of disappointment, a sense of fear to a certain extent, especially when it comes to seeing, for example, the Confederate flag waved inside the building, which apparently had never happened even during like the Civil War. So in terms of that, like from a historical perspective, a lot of like shock and fear. But from a personal perspective, like myself, I was expecting some riots and protests. I am a little surprised it got that far to the point where people were like inside the building. But the overarching sentiment behind it was not surprising to me.
Yeah, good insights. The images were very unnerving, right? Taking selfies in the rotunda with their arms around statues, men sitting in Pelosi's desk, right? Sitting at the dais on the floor of the Senate. Will, what were your thoughts? What did you think of the day's events?
Yeah, I think Alessia, started off really well. I think it's completely inexcusable. It's a disgusting act of, I don't know, these people were thinking that they were being patriots by doing this. In fact, they were doing quite the opposite. They were trying to tear down what America stands for. I think it was disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, that's a sacred place, right? The U.S. Capitol, and certainly desecrated for sure. And to what end? We mentioned this at the start of the show before we brought you all on. To what end? What were they going to do? Force the Electoral College not to be certified? So really kind of unusual there. Max, share with us your thoughts of the day.
Yeah, well, I thought you brought up a good point. The Capitol building is really kind of like a pillar of our democracy, and it was just like Wednesday, it was really shocking for me at first. I was really angered, and just seeing an attack on our democracy was just like something I would never think I would see in my lifetime. The United States is traditionally seen as like, the strongest democracy in the world, and just seeing that and seeing how like far we've kind of come, it's kind of really sad for me.
An embarrassment around the world for us, right, Max?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so, it's funny, the mainstream media had predicted lots of things about the Trump administration that didn't come true. One thing they had predicted was chaos at the end of his term upon leaving. And many Republicans said that wouldn't happen, right? He's going to leave if he's voted out. Unfortunately, some of that prediction came true. Sean, finish us off. What are your thoughts on the day's events?
Yeah, personally, I thought the events of Wednesday's riots were rather inexcusable and utterly un-American. I think, as many of my co-leaders have mentioned, America was founded on the principles of liberty and democracy, and such an attack on a building that upholds this liberty and democracy is, rather disgusting, rather. And, I just think we need to move forward from this, and, we really need to heal as a nation in the coming years, and, take this moment as sort of a stop in time and reflect and then go forward.
Good. Yeah, I mean, if you've ever visited the Capitol, I've had the opportunity to be there several times. It's a beautiful, beautiful building with a lot of really, truly important history there. So I share all those sentiments. Nicole, what do you have for the group?
Okay, so as the leaders of the two different political clubs we have in the upper school, what are you guys aiming to do to encourage open and thoughtful discussion that includes a wide range of beliefs and perspectives among students?
Anyone can take that from either side? Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, I think at the in the Young Republicans Club, we really try to put an emphasis on allowing all of our students to engage in open and truthful dialogue. I think we're very respectful of everyone's opinion, and we understand that different students might have different beliefs on the political spectrum, and we respect that, and we really encourage that students share their opinion and learn from others, and just have go into every meeting with open ears and an open mind.
Well, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was going to say something along those lines, but basically, we just want to make sure that everybody's voice is heard, and it's important to know that, it's not all about your political views. Like, Max and I are really, really good friends. We've been close friends since 9th grade, and we can have these discussions about politics, but, sometimes it gets heated, sometimes it doesn't. But the important thing is that it never gets to the point where, we're genuinely mad at each other and, we're actually angry. But I just think that it's important to keep that in mind, since it shouldn't all be about your political views. And I hope to work harder with Max and Alessia to set up some joint meetings with the Young Democrats Club, because I think that could be really important to hear everybody's point of view.
Yeah, good job. Good job. It's called tolerance, I think, right? Accepting someone else's opinion. You try to persuade someone else. If you're successful, great. If not, you keep trying, but be friendly, right? You don't have to hate each other. Alyssa, what are your thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, sort of going off of Will said, it is about more than your political views. And I feel like while it's also a space for disagreement, obviously, there is a sort of sense of kinship because we know at the end of the day that we are Americans who are interested in politics because we want to make the nation better and because we want to see it at its peak. So even though we might have differing opinions, we're still sort of aiming for the same goals. It's just a difference of like what we see the end result to be.
Max, you want to address that question?
Yeah, I think that right now, with tension just being so high, the most important thing is that we continue to talk and we continue to have the decency to be able to share a dialogue with each other, especially because as we see, like with our leaders, they at a time they don't really like to talk to each other. You know, it seems like party communications have really decreased in recent years. And I think that the ability that we have to hold dialogues, especially like Will said, we're really close friends, and Sean and I as well. I think that's really important to have and to set an example for other people.
Yeah, all well said by all four of you. Of course, I am old enough to know and remember a time when Democrats and Republicans hung out together, talked to each other in Washington, D.C. and state capitals across the country, right up through the mid to late 1990s. It was a common happening, right? You had to talk to each other to make progress. And sadly, that is beginning to disappear for sure. Jake, you have a question for the group?
Yeah, I got one. So it looks like the U.S. Senate is 50-50, but what priorities do you expect Schumer and McConnell to push for?
Go ahead, Max.
Personally, I think that the Democrats have talked a lot about the stimulus checks being up there with a $2,000 stimulus check. And I also think that something that's really important that they should look at is trying to speed up the distribution of the vaccine. I think Biden said something yesterday where he was going to like release all available doses to the states. And I think that's pretty important because I don't know if we're really going to be able to like recover until this virus is gone for sure.
Anyone else want to comment?
Yeah, I think I think the Democrats kind of have an extraordinary opportunity here for the next 2 years. They control, the three most important branches of government in terms of lawmaking. And I think that, they could really do something that they want to do here. But I think for McConnell right now, the priority is winning those seats back in 2022. We've seen over the past, 50 to 70 years or so, but, the incumbent president's party typically loses seats in the midterm elections. So I think that's kind of what McConnell's looking for here.
Yeah, so clearly we've seen the pendulum swing again, haven't we? It swung right in 2016, it swung back left here in 2020, and it's been a common kind of pendulum swing for the past 50 or 60 years, and that's obviously the case. The Republicans seem very positive that they will gain seats in 2022, already looking 2 years ahead. Anyone else want to comment on that question? Alicia?
Yeah, I also think, speaking of McConnell specifically and like looking back to gain back seats, I do think there is going to be some sense of damage control from like the PR point. I think we've already started to see that in terms of like certain Republicans who had previously been staunch allies of Trump beginning to distance themselves from him. So I think there is going to be a sense of like returning to normalcy in the Republican Party and going back to like the most traditional values they had. So that's something I see happening.
Okay, good. Sean, you want to comment?
Yeah, I was just gonna, touch on a little bit of what Alessia was getting on there. I think Alessia's definitely right. I think within the Republican Party, within the Trump administration, there was a lot of change that happened in the Republican Party, and I think in these next 4 years, there's going to be a bit of rebuilding that goes on within the Republican Party, and I think as far as the Democrats go, I think Will brought up a great point, and that's that they have a very great opportunity these next 4 years controlling all three branches of U.S. government, or not necessarily executive, judicial, but I'm saying House, Senate, White House, and they have a great opportunity, and they can definitely implement some policy that will that could heal the country as we need it very much so right now.
Okay, Jack, what do you have for us?
So, of course, this was a major point of I would say, disgusting act on our nation's unity. So do you think there's room for healing and coming together for the American people in the future?
Whoever wants to chime in?
Yeah, I think absolutely there is. I think something that's really important right now that we have is kind of a unified government in that it's all blue. I think that that's uh, in terms of the country, I think that's a lot better than if there was another stalemate like there was for the past few years and like there was for the end of Obama's term. I think that like a stalemate like that is really harmful to the unity, and I think that that comes from obviously just blocking someone like for instance like blocking someone just because of their political views and not actually trying to pass laws that better the American people. So I think that hopefully this means that government can be effective in their own right and people can come together and while they might not necessarily agree, it would be a good example that a democratic government could set for everyone.
Max or Lisa, you want to comment on that question?
Yeah, following up on what Will said, I think while obviously like horrifying in a roundabout way, the attack on the Capitol, I think, is a good start because I feel like both sides of the aisle are very much united in that, okay, like this cannot be our America. It cannot, this just cannot be allowed to happen. We have to take steps to like return to the pre-2016 dynamic and hopefully build an even better one. So I'm hoping that we can sort of continue this wave of like sort of new allyship and newly seeing like eye to eye on certain points to sort of jumpstart that healing process and make progress for the next 4 years.
I think one of the things that will help, like Donald Trump, don't like Donald Trump, that Twitter feed, whether he gets it back or not, will not be as constant as it was, that daily grind of tweets. So that in of itself might bring some healing. Rahil, you got a question for the group?
Yeah, should President Trump be removed using the 25th or via impeachment?
Sean, what do you think?
Personally, I think, it's really tough to say for me. I think all of this has kind of transpired very quickly. And, I think the 25th, it would remove him from office. And what is there, 10 days left? I think as a country, we need to be a little bit more focused on moving forward and uniting and kind of like understanding what went wrong. How can we do better in the future? And I think, constant, looking to impeachment and, how can we fix something that's already, behind us is kind of a little bit off of the idea of unity. And I think overall, whether he gets impeached or the 25th is invoked, I just think the main priority for us as a country needs to be unity and moving forward.
Good. What do you think, Max?
Well, yeah, I can definitely see the point where us needing to unify as a country. But I personally think that Trump should be impeached. He obviously just incited violence and kind of created this whole mess, I think, or had a part to play in it. And I think that the most important thing with impeachment is if they impeach him, they can also vote to disqualify him from running again for office. And I think just with all of the baggage that Trump has, I think that's the best thing if he just stays away from our politics. And I don't think that he's going to willingly want to do that. So I think if we impeached him, then that would have the best outcome for both sides.
So, Max, I'm sure you recognize the timing constraint on the impeachment. So if he wouldn't get a trial in the Senate, but you think just the symbolic nature of having the impeachment vote in the House is sufficient?
Yeah, I mean, he would be the only U.S. president to be impeached twice, and that has something to say.
Elisa, Will, any final comments?
Yeah, if I may. I agree with Max in that I think, President Trump definitely was the main force behind the attacks on the Capitol. And I 100% think he is unfit for office. And I thought he's been unfit for office since 2016. But that being said, I was reading this opinion about why it wouldn't work to to impeach Trump, and that is because we've seen before with the Russia probe, with the first impeachment, it's not going to send a message, and Trump is going to use it as, he's going to spin it in his own way, saying that this was political revenge and that this wasn't a constitutional removal. And I think that, I think that Trump could definitely do some damage if he continues to carry that type of rhetoric. So I think, he's defeated. He's got his tail between his legs. I think we just let him ride this out until the end of his presidency. And I think that we move on from there.
Lisa, why don't you give us the final thoughts?
Yeah, I think from a pragmatic perspective, if he isn't convicted by the Senate, it sort of becomes a waste of time, in my opinion, because if the whole point is trying to prevent him from doing further damage, and he doesn't lose his ability to run and hold other public office, it sort of becomes a moot point. So I think we're going to have to choose between making the political statement of him getting impeached twice or letting it go and hoping he sort of removes himself from threatening positions by himself.
Okay, well, we are way over time. We couldn't stop you all because you had so much great things to say. I want to thank the leaders of the Young Democrats and the Young Republican clubs from King Community for joining us today. Max Crook, Lisa Paz, Will Burke, and Sean Mullen. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on campus on Monday.
Thank you, Mr.
All the best. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Mr. Roche.
You're welcome.
Pass.
All right, so that was a great conversation. Really well done by our team. Great questions. Thank you for doing that. I hope you don't mind we let them go a little long, right? It's an important conversation for us to have, and I'm glad we were able to participate in that. Now it's how about something more fun? It's time for
What Did We Learn This Week?
All right. Do we have a volunteer to start? Who wants to start? All right, go ahead, Nicole.
In my AP Calculus class this week, we learned L'Hopital's rule, which was really interesting reintroduction to the class after a long break in the second quarter, because we actually kind of tied in what we learned in the first quarter, which is if you have a really complicated limit function and it's 0 over 0, which means does not exist, you can actually use this rule to make it a lot simpler and just take the derivative of the top and the derivative of the bottom, the numerator and denominator, and plug in your limit then, and then you'll get a much simpler answer. So I wish we had learned this in the first quarter so that I didn't have to do all of that simplifying, but it's nice to know now.
All right, how about a shout out for the teacher?
Ms. Karapides.
Ms. Karapides. Who's next?
In history class, we started a unit on Alexander the Great, and I got to learn a little bit about him.
Was he great? Do we
There's
know
a
yet,
lot.
Jack? Can we answer that question yet?
There's a lot of debate
Okay.
between him and.
I wonder if he gave that name himself. Did he give himself the great name?
No, I believe that. I think that's just what he acquired because he just conquered such
Oh, is that what it was?
expanded territory in so little time.
ITs, of course. A shout out for the teacher, Jack.
Mr. O'Neill.
Mr. O'Neill. Oh my goodness, he's an amazing teacher. Was he yelling while he was telling you that?
Raising his voice.
Rahel, what'd you learn this week?
So in my environmental science class, we took a look at a bunch of countries' diets and their daily calorie consumption. And what I learned is why America has maybe the worst diet right
Are you
now.
a little too much already, Rahel?
Yeah, I'd say
Okay.
too many sugars and fats.
Who's the teacher there?
Mr. Barat.
Mr. Murphy.
Well, this week I was all online. I haven't been to school once.
We missed you, yeah, Jake. We didn't see you in the hallways.
I know. I'm coming back, and so this week it was a little hard because it was all online. But in my AP psychology class, we were basically just doing a lot of review because we were all finally coming back after a few months of being in our other classes, and it was fun to be reminded of all the stuff that we started before. One of them was Maslow's hierarchy, and I'm sure you've all heard of that. The triangle of needs. It's a very famous thing in psychology. It's sort of like a triangle, and at the bottom you have basic needs, then you have luxuries, and then you have the final needs of humanity. And that's just sort of like what we all strive to get. Now, I don't have them all memorized, so don't
I won't
don't
quiz
ask
you.
me
I will
to
not
say
quiz
that. But yeah, it's very fun to be back in this class, and that's
you. And that's Mr. Schneider, right?
Yeah.
He's back after he was away for the second quarter. He's back on campus.
Yeah. So I'm
Great
glad
to
to be
see
back
that.
in that class.
Great to see Mr. Schneider with that great hair. All right, and that was.
What did we learn this week?
All right, just a little segue before we leave that little segment. Jack Zipper mentioned Alexander the Great. I had a student, Tom Zobek's son, Mr. Zobek's son, in my first year here. Carl was his name. First day in class, I called Carl Zobek. He doesn't say anything. He said, Carl Zobek, I'm called the Great One, he says. And I call him the Great One every day since. It's kind of funny. All right, now let's move on to King things. Talk to us about a great King community. Nicole, what do we have?
All right, so students at King have some really impressive accomplishments right now. Among those students are Sammy Hillenmeyer and Joe Winterlich, who have been recognized as among the top 300 scholars in the 80th Regeneron Science Talent Search, the nation's oldest and most prestigious science and mathematics competition for high school seniors. As scholars, they are in the running to make the top 40 finalists list. Sammy is working to try and convert methane, a gas fuel, to methanol, a liquid fuel, in order to reduce greenhouse emissions and mitigate climate change. Joe is seeking to identify a cure for the devastating tuberculosis disease by using human and murine proteins that have naturally occurring antibacterial properties.
How about a little round of applause for those guys and that success. Way to go, way to go. We're very proud of them. I happen to have two of them in my class, and their science teacher was very excited the other day, and they came to our class. And Nicole, you saw that, right? Yeah. Waiting to let them know the great news. Jake, what do you have for us?
So, J.C. Fredette, Ronnie Harvey, Sammy Hillenmeyer, Nick Jang, Nadia Kusher, and Joaquin Silvani are all studying multivariable calculus with mathematics faculty Dr. Toniolo. Recently, these 6 students had an opportunity to collaborate together to transform the theoretical material they learned in class into an actual product. The students worked in the Innovation Lab to use Tinkercad as a software product.
Okay,
Pretty advanced, cool. Impressive stuff.
Yeah, Miss Toniolo, she was in the same business line I was in. She was in the private sector banking community.
Really?
Yeah, she was doing high-end algorithms for big banking players. So she comes out of the private sector as well. She's really impressive. Okay, nice catch up on the King community. Not too much this week with the King community, but we always keep in touch with our amazing place here at King. Now it's time to turn it over to Jack Zipper, Rahil Jaswal for sports. Talk to us, boys.
Thanks, Mr. Roche. And let's start in New York, where the Mets and new owner Steve Cohen have made their intentions known by trading for future Hall of Famer Francisco Lindor. Lindor and Cleveland's contract negotiations were at a standstill, so the cash-strapped Indians dealt Lindor to the Mets, where new owner Steve Cohen is more than willing to meet his massive contract demands. The Mets also received pitcher Carlos Carrasco while giving up infielders Andres Jimenez and Ahmed Rosario, right-hander Josh Wolf, and outfielder Isaiah Green. The move will improve the holes in Cleveland's roster as well as giving them much-needed financial flexibility, while the Mets finally get the big-name superstar that could deliver them back into the playoffs. Die-hard Mets fan Jack Zipper is over the moon with this trade, but hopes the Mets won't just be off-season champs, but actually World Series champs as well.
Wait, did he just use your name in the third person?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Go ahead, continue.
Okay, so to the NFL now, and the All-Pro teams have been released. Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce and Rams defensive lineman Aaron Donald both are unanimous choices, making their third and sixth teams respectively. 2,000-yard rusher Derrick Henry makes his first appearance on the team, and MVP favorite Aaron Rodgers makes his third team, as well as his favorite target, Devontae Adams. I'll send it down to Rahil now for some wild card weekend previews.
Thanks, Jack. So as we all know, the NFL playoffs kick off this weekend. For the first time ever, there will be 3 wildcard games on Saturday and 3 on Sunday. On Saturday, the Colts and Bills will kick us off at 1 o'clock. Buffalo looks to live up to their hype as a lot of people think they have the best chance at dethroning Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. At 4:40, the Rams will take on the Seahawks, both teams representing the NFC West division. The Rams and Seahawks split their season series. However, LA could be in some trouble if Jared Goff does not play. Then concluding Saturday is the football team and the Buccaneers, as Tom Brady looks to continue his quest to win his first ring without Belichick. On Sunday, the Ravens and Titans face off in a rematch of last year's divisional round, which saw the Titans pull off a huge upset. The Ravens look to stop Derrick Henry, who became the 8th player in NFL history to rush for 2,000 yards this season. At 4:40, the Bears will play the Saints. New Orleans looks to try and win that Super Bowl that has evaded them for the last couple of years. This also is most likely Drew Brees' last chance at his second ring. And to conclude Wildcard Weekend, the Browns will play their divisional rival Pittsburgh Steelers. This is the Browns' first playoff trip since 2002, and they look to stick it to the longtime rival who has dominated them the last couple years. This Wildcard Weekend is sure to be crazy.
Well, there's only one game of interest, and that's the Bucks against the Washington football team. I like the way you phrased that, just football team earlier on. So Patriots fans are still alive. We still have something to cheer for here. It's Tom Brady. Let's go, Tommy. All right, that does it for sports. However, now I want to put you guys on the line for the first time. We're going to do some predictions on the wild card game. Nicole and Jake, if you want to get involved, please jump in. We'll start with Jack. Jack, we have the Colts at the Bills. 11-5 Colts about the 13-3 Bills. Who do you got?
It's the Bills. The Indianapolis might have a great defense, and DeForest Buckner is their X-Factor player. But Buffalo is coming off some serious momentum, and I just don't think Indianapolis has enough to beat the Bills.
Real Colts, Bills.
I'm going to agree with Jack and go with Buffalo. Buffalo is red hot right now. Probably the hottest team in the NFL. Josh Allen is playing out of his mind. So Buffalo all the way.
All right, I'm jumping on Buffalo as well. Nicole, Jake, you want to pick a team?
I'll go with what they said.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know enough about sports in order to pick on my own.
All right, no worries. We want to keep you involved. All right, our second game, the 10-6 Rams and the 12-4 Seahawks. Jack, who do you got?
So there's a variable to my pick here. So if Jared Goff comes back, I'm picking the Rams. But if he doesn't play, it's the Seahawks.
Okay, when will we know?
I believe he is still questionable.
Okay. Raheel, who do you got?
Regardless if Jared Goff plays or doesn't play, it's Seahawks. Seahawks, Jared Goff is too inconsistent with his play.
Yeah, the Rams don't play big-time games. I'm taking Seahawks as well. Nicole, Jake, if you want to. Okay, I'll leave you guys. I'll leave you two alone.
What they said. What they said.
What they said. Okay, we're going to use that as a quote for the two of you. What they said. All right, last game. The only game I'll be watching this weekend. Bucks at the Washington football team. Who do you got, Jack?
Though I'm not ruling out the football team for this game, it's Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay just too much offense. They're red hot. They've had two awesome offensive performances in a row, absolutely destroyed the Falcons, dropped like a 45-point bomb. So I think that Tampa Bay takes this game.
Raheel, who do you got?
Tampa Bay, but I think it's going to be pretty close because Washington has the defensive line to make Tom Brady feel uncomfortable. Also, Mike Evans might not be playing because he hyperextended that leg last week.
And as a lifelong Patriots fan, I can tell you, as every Patriots fan can, if you rush Tom Brady and get him off the spot, he doesn't do so well. However, Tampa Bay will win the game. My boy Tommy Brady is going to make it happen. All right, Sunday, 11-5 Ravens versus 11-5 Titans. Who you got, Jack?
So this is a revenge game, and I think Lamar Jackson really has to prove himself that he can actually win a playoff game. And I think that Baltimore will take this game because of those reasons.
Raheel, who you got?
Baltimore. Lamar Jackson's not going to throw much because Tennessee can't stop the run to save their lives.
Okay, good. I'm going to take Baltimore as well. I think they stumble a little bit here in the mid to late season, but I think they'll pick it back up here in the playoffs. Second game, 8-8 Bears against the 12-4 Saints. Jack, who you got?
Saints.
Saints, easy one, right?
Easiest pick of the playoffs.
Raheel?
Yep, I'm going Saints.
I'm with you guys in the Saints as well. Last game of the weekend, 11-5 Browns versus 12-4 Steelers. Really interesting game. Feel bad for the Browns that they got the Steelers in the first round. Who do you got, Jack?
Honestly, I don't think Cleveland has the tools to make a deep playoff run. Pittsburgh hasn't had the best momentum, but I think that they'll take this game. Pittsburgh.
Real?
Pittsburgh, but it's probably going to come down to the last player, last minute of the game. These divisional games always end up coming down to the wire, but Pittsburgh, they've had the Browns number now for the last 4-5 years, and they have what it takes right now, but we'll see because Pittsburgh's very inconsistent as well.
All right. Just out of sympathy with the region, I'm going to go with the Browns. Okay? All right, that finishes up with our predictions. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time. We're going to be off for MLK weekend, but the following week we'll check on these predictions. They'll already be in the playoffs or not. We'll see. All right, because we're so over time today, folks, we're going to skip our normal reports on the economy in terms of – we're going to do some employment reports. The ADP report on Wednesday, way below expectations. Initial jobless claims on Thursday. Again, a big rise in jobless claims. Non-farm payroll report on Friday. The employment situation again showed tremendous weakness. The renewed lockdowns in October and November are beginning to impact the employment market again. And we're seeing some severe troubles in the labor market. Instead of that, we're going to go just data and the markets. Nicole, start us off.
All right, on Friday, we had the December employment situation report. Non-Pharma payrolls down 140,000 versus up 336,000 in November. Unemployment rate U3, 6.7%. Unemployment rate U6, 11.7% versus 6.7% and 12% in November, respectively. Average hourly earnings up 0.8% versus up 0.3% in November, and the average work week was unchanged at 34.4 hours.
That U6 number that you mentioned, that's the full unemployment number, including everybody, right? It's the really best measure we have, and that's high. 11.7% is high. Jake?
Right. For Thursday, initial unemployment claims week ending January 2nd, 787,000 versus 790,000 in prior week. November international trade goods and services down 68.1 billion versus down 63 billion in October. December ISM non-manufacturing index 59.4 versus 58 in November.
President Trump wanted to improve our trade balance. When he came into office, never was able to do it. In fact, it's gotten worse. China has gained in the pandemic lockdowns. Next.
On Wednesday, we have MBA mortgage applications week ending January 1st, up 1.7% versus up 1.7% in the prior week. We have December ADP employment report down 120,000 versus up 304,000 in November. And we have November factory orders, which is up 1% versus up 1.3% in October.
RJ?
On Tuesday, December ISM manufacturing index 60.7 versus 57.5 in November.
And on Monday, we had November construction spending up 0.9% versus up 1.6% in October. If you were listening carefully there, you noticed every data point we cited for November pretty much was lower than October. Again, indicating the impact of the renewed lockdowns across the country. All right, for the week ahead, what do we have for Monday, RJ?
No, we have no data.
Jake, what do you have on
No
Tuesday?
data.
Cole?
On Wednesday, we have MBA mortgage applications week ending 1/8, December consumer price index, and the federal budget balance.
On Thursday, we have initial unemployment claims week ending January 9th.
Friday, December producer price index, January Empire State Manufacturing Index, December retail sales, December capacity utilization and industrial production, and January Michigan consumer sentiment.
All right, so a busy day on Friday. Jake, did we step on you on Tuesday with the no data? Did we skip over you?
Yeah, I believe
Sorry,
so.
buddy. Nothing personal. Nothing personal. All right, let's check in on markets for the week ending January 8th. As always, want to see how prices are moving. And keep in mind now, this is the change since we left in December 18th. Okay, so big change here, but it's important to indicate that. Notice. Jack, start us off.
So the S&P 500 is at 3,825, which is up 192 points.
NASDAQ 13,202, up 825 points.
3-month Treasury, 0.137%, up 6 basis points.
10-year Treasury, 1.119%, up 22 basis points.
30-year Treasury, 1.875%, up 24.7 basis points.
Eurodollar 1.2220, up 110 pips.
Dollar yen, 103.93, up 8 pips.
Sterling, 1.3560, up 340 pips.
Dollar CAD, 1.2680, down 90 pips.
West Texas Intermediate $52.73, up $6.17.
Brent, $55.99, up $6.02.
Gasoline, $1.55, up 24 cents.
Gold, $1,850, down $7.
Gold is, the shine's off gold because of Bitcoin. Bitcoin's up at $37,000 per coin. Holy cow, it's insane. By the way, we're in a bubble now. Okay, we have COVID, we have the lockdowns, we have an economy in real trouble, with more trouble coming in 2021. Tensions globally, tensions politically, and stock markets are record high. Something's wrong. Don't put your money to work. Keep a trailing stop. Things are going to get messy in 2021. I suspect. You heard it here first. All right. On that fine note, let's go to our friendly reminders and now our show. Nicole, start us off.
Do your reading.
Do your homework.
Come to class prepared.
Use your blinker when making turns or switching lanes.
Stop signs mean stop.
And no texting while driving.
That is it for us. Thank you to all for joining us at the KingCast. Of course, thanks to Jack, Rahil, Jake, Nicole. We miss Lily. Hi, Lily. Come back to us soon. Of course, tell your friends and family to listen to the KingCast at kingschoolct.org campus live page. We'd love to have your clips. That's it for us. We're out of here. Thank you so much.